right, everybody. Now we can start. All right. So, good afternoon, Code Talks. I really do love being in this new theater. This is amazing. Once again, it is an honor, such an honor for me to be here today and to be invited to give this final keynote talk at this amazing event that's growing. And I love seeing this Code Talks growing over the years. And I was last here in 2022, and I'm struck by just how different our industry is and just how much has changed in that time since 2022. Back in 2022, we're still riding the wave of post-pandemic investment, record-breaking valuations, and a kind of gold rush around new tech, especially in games, tools, and platforms. It felt like everything was possible, like teams were expanding, ideas were getting funded, and there was this real optimism about what was possible. Fast forward to 2025, and that landscape has completely shifted. Layoffs, contractions, deal droughts, and what was once a time of riches now feels like a time of reckoning. In fact, you may have heard that my own studio tipped over sideways when funding our game was pulled in July. And we went from a large team of 110 people to a micro team. But we survived, and many other studios were not so lucky. Over 26% of game dev professionals in Europe were laid off in the past year. And of those, 10% of them are still out of work. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Cool, John, thanks. That's exactly the pick-me-up that we need to end this conference. But this reckoning, like this difficult time, it's also why this inflection point matters, because when things get hard, that's when innovation truly sharpens. That's when the next generation of tools, studios, and platforms gets defined, and it's already happening. No matter where you are in the tech stack, whether it's apps, infrastructure, AI, or systems, I believe game dev offers a glimpse of what's coming next. New pipelines, new business models, and new rules. And in spite of all that's changing, I really think it's going to be okay. So today I'm going to talk about this inflection point, the rise of AI, the return of micro teams, and what happens when platform owners become publishers and creators become studios. So let me give you some context for why I feel this way. In tech, we've had moments of irrational optimism, and we've had sharp corrections. 2025 feels like both, part hangover, part reboot. But if you look at what came after each of those contractions, that's where the real innovation happened. For instance, in 1983, the entire video game industry crashed. There was a mass oversaturation in the market, poor quality control, and loss of consumer confidence that caused a retail collapse. But it cleared the way for Nintendo's rise and the idea of platform holder gatekeeping. And in 1989, the consumer internet era really kicked off. Services like CompuServe and AOL connected everyone. It was a huge shift from software as product to software as a service. And by 1995, the rise of the GUI, graphical user interface, hits the mainstream with Windows 95. It makes the web and computing accessible to the general public. And some of you may remember the huge expansion in software development and the transformation of UI design culture at that time. And by 1999, investors flooded internet companies with money, hoping to get in on the action. And everyone and everything was getting funded as long as there was a .com at the end of it. This speculation, of course, was followed by a dramatic crash when the .com bubble burst in 2000. Capital was wiped out, hiring was reshaped, and many were in survival mode. And the result? Sustainable growth became the new gospel. And if you think Pets.com and Webvan had issues, it was at this time that I decided to start working on Daikatana, ensuring my own reckoning was not far behind. In 2004, Facebook arrived, introducing the social graph and user-generated content. Our industry shifted from publishing to users to building platforms for users to publish their own stuff. And in 2007, the iPhone upended everything in software and hardware. If you were in tech at this time, you know how monumental this introduction was. For the first time, mobile became a first-class platform. The iPhone competed with everything else for people's attention, and it won. And the app ecosystem also changed the economics of our business. Think free apps, microtrans, and rapid updates. But in late 2019, our world would change, and this time it wasn't a technical shift, but a global one. It was the pandemic. It created a radical shift in basically everything: remote work, remote education, remote family gatherings. There was a huge investment in collaboration tools, cloud infrastructure, and digital entertainment. Games, streaming, and Zoom exploded in usage, and so did investment in tech. Meanwhile, empty office, real estate, and brick-and-mortar businesses struggled to survive as at-home and online became the place to be. And my point is that we've been at these major inflection points many times. Massive crashes, big changes, and each time we've come through stronger and working in a different way. And most recently, it's generative AI and its entrance into the public discussion. Yeah, AI. Have you heard enough about AI? It's becoming central to new startups and creative tooling. And if you're looking for investment for anything but AI, good luck. AI has shifted from background automation to the potential of a foreground creative force. And in game dev, generative AI has truly been nothing short of a wild card. Let's take a deeper look into the possibilities it offers and the challenges it presents. Now, I mentioned that it was a wild card, but more than that, really, it's a substantial cultural conflict between the power of tech, how far it can go, what it can do, and how it affects those working in the industry. Just over the course of my last game that I've been working on, the game industry went from embedded AI, think of tools like Grammarly for design docs or generative fill in Photoshop for art, to the potential of a complete generative asset pipeline. Code, art, audio, and game design all in the space of a single project. Around the edges, of course, there were full generative tools like Midjourney, but they remain largely around the edges. Most devs never use them for production purposes. And when ChatGPT appeared, however, it took the industry by such surprise that our publishers' only response to it was simply, no, do not use it for any reason at all whatsoever. Their concern was around the legal shaky ground of who owns what when it's created with AI. Like, you could ask Chat to write you a detailed world lore doc for a role-playing game, and it could, and it would, never mind the quality of that. Seeing its potential, the creative people who made games expressed concerns. They feared for theft of their creative work and that AI was going to replace them. And thousands spoke out online, and voice actors went on a prolonged strike to prevent their voices and likenesses from being used beyond the scope of the original production. And it wasn't without merit. Indeed, people were being replaced with AI tools, and in some cases, those people designed the tech that fed the tools that took their jobs. And I think it's worth noting that while AI has been on the horizon, no one in the creative space was really prepared for just how fast it hit, not to mention the possibilities that might come with it. And for some, the lure was very hard to resist. A friend of mine, a researcher in the game dev space, mentioned that many developers that he talked to were using AI in pre-production, but were not comfortable admitting that publicly. And this year marks the first year that game awards committees, like BAFTA, have had to wrestle with these issues. Is using AI, even in pre-production, an automatic negative mark on your game? And some gamers have come out against AI as well, gamers. So not wanting to play what they refer to as AI slop games, and also wanting to support the creative people making games. Steam, the largest online platform for PC games, required that games disclose whether generative AI was used in their making, distinguished between pre- and live-generated AI content. Some games fell afoul of this disclosure and were called out. So looking from the outside in, what you would see is an industry largely against generative AI anywhere in the creative process. However, those who invest in tech have a very different message. When pitching new games, investors are asking, what's your AI strategy? And if you don't have one, they're not interested. The larger the budget, the more that this holds true. And investors are also telling people this: use AI or you will be left behind. The reasoning being that a pipeline with no AI will take longer to create, the game will take longer to create, and be more expensive than a pipeline that integrates AI. However, bear in mind that these calls are coming from inside the house, from investors and publishers who are already heavily invested in AI and its integration. Of course they want it to be used. And Gabe Newell, the CEO of Steam, the platform that required games to post whether their games use AI content, he agreed, saying that game devs who don't know how to use AI are going to struggle. So it poses a challenge to developers who choose to go without AI entirely. Some use it to automate non-creative tasks, such as spotting vulnerabilities and automating social moderation. Some use it as a super Google, means to do deep research that would otherwise take hours. And as for creative tasks, we'll talk more about why I don't think it's ready for creative tasks in a sec. And for those who already are using AI, they're being told by those funding games that they need to rapidly accelerate their use. And with all these points, those funding games have a dozen stories to share about companies, these other companies, that are using AI to prototype their games to get further ahead in way less time. And so, taken together, the result is, well, a mess, a cultural conflict, an inflection point where people creating products who want to use AI responsibly or not at all are being told by those people funding tech to rapidly accelerate their use, or GTFO. And in line with that, just within the last few weeks, Electronic Arts, one of the industry's biggest publishers, announced that they are going to rapidly accelerate their use of AI by partnering with Stability AI. But this did not go over well. Reports of it backfiring and employees mocking the policy and openly expressing their frustration were everywhere. So what do I think at this inflection point? Well, let me start by saying that I don't think AI is going away. I do think that it will become normalized in our everyday use, and I do believe that the cultural conflict will be resolved in a way that both protects and celebrates creators while also automating tasks under their direction. That said, I do think that there will be a market correction and that some of the money that's been poured into AI will not bear fruit. And not everyone's going to win this. And at the moment, no one is winning. Like, AI is not even making money yet. So in games, the big promise is that AI will reduce the cost for content and give me, as a gamer, more to do, more content to consume. But think about this for a minute. I don't know if you're like me, but I have more games in my Steam library than I have time left in my life. There are more books, more movies than I have time for, as well as games. So the promise of AI to create even more content using LLMs to create, endless NPC conversations and generative storylines is not of interest to me. I don't need more content. And while some see AI as the solution to the economic problems we're experiencing in games, I don't believe that AI is the answer to what ails us at the moment. In fact, I agree with Sven Vinks that human creativity is needed to get us through the space that we're in. In fact, I believe that reliance on AI will only further exacerbate the challenges that we face, particularly in the creative space. AI is simply just not capable of true creative innovation, at least not now. By design, it's derivative. And only the human mind can find that next new thing. The only place I see AI being useful, at least right now, is in saving a lot of time. And to test this theory, I periodically run this test, something I call, but does it make Doom? I mean, we've all heard about does it run Doom? It has become the de facto technical test. Doom runs on everything from pregnancy tests and printers to lawnmowers to CPU coolers. And using Doom to overwrite firmware is a common hack to highlight security vulnerabilities. Everything runs Doom, and if it doesn't, it's just a matter of time. In fact, there's even a website, canitRunDoom.org, that catalogs the latest and greatest attempts. Even the European Space Agency satellite runs Doom. Is it even a computer if it can't run Doom? So I decided to create a corollary test for AI, but does it make Doom? And I know at this point that it has copied Doom. Researchers succeeded in training a model to recreate approximately 20 minutes of Doom's gameplay without access to any of its code or its assets. And while this is exceptionally impressive, it hadn't answered the question for me, can it make Doom? So I put it to the test. Can you create a Doom level in the style of John Romero? I asked. At this point, after 32 years, everything about Doom is known. The data structures of the levels, how a Doom WAD is created, the typical tells of my level design. And chat knows this too. Absolutely, it began, excitedly. And then it proceeded to tell me about the hallmarks of my levels. Now, the text here doesn't particularly matter, but it was accurate. And AI even offered more examples to highlight its complete understanding of my design style. Now, the first time I did this was more than a year ago, and AI told me, excitedly, of course, that it had created a level. And it invited me to open the data file in the Doom engine. And I thought, that's a small file. But I was excited, so I opened it up, and I found out that it had created this box. Square Doom room. That's it. And for comparison, this is an actual schematic of a level of mine. This one's from Sigil, and it contains all the same things the AI model says that my levels do. It's in the level there. So just before code.talks, I asked again, but can it make Doom? Can it create a level in my style? And here's where we're at. So where to start? Technically, sure, it's impressive that it can do this at all, like create a WAD file. And I should add that it's not just a schematic. It's creating full-on Doom levels. But overall, yeah, I'm not fearing for my job anytime soon. So I told it, and I quote, "That's horrible. That's nothing like my levels." Fair point, you're absolutely right. That little UDMF stub was just a functional sample, not a genuine reflection of John Romero's design sensibilities. I was almost feeling guilty at this point. It promised to do it again, this time for real. And this is what it created. 6 boxes. In this case, more is still less. There's the start and the end right next to each other. So AI can run Doom. AI can copy Doom. But as of yet, AI cannot make Doom, at least in any way that is yet compelling. And for game design, AI is at the equivalent of creating stick figures and toddler-level sentences. So I don't believe that AI is ready to replace the creative human. Is it a good tool for social moderation? To assist with coding, to take away drudge tasks? Sure. But any creative endeavor requires human creativity, or it is bound to be derivative by the very design of AI. And that's how it's made, and that's how it's built. So at this inflection point, beyond this inflection point, long live the human mind. These are the games I want to play. AI is not going away, but it's not going to replace us either. So if AI is not going to wholly replace the human creator, how is it being used in games? Well, think of AI as the new middleware layer, the connective tissue between tools, data, and creative systems. Instead of building monolithic tools that try to do everything, studios are writing up modular AI brains that assist with tasks like code, gameplay, testing, level design, support, and player behavior analysis. AI middleware has become an industry in its own right. Similar to there's an app for that, entrepreneurs are asking themselves, is there an AI plugin for that? So tools like Claude Code, for instance, allow coders to do more and to upskill. And entry-level programmers with experience in AI-assisted coding are finding placement faster than those who are not. And AI modules like Comfy UI, they plug right into the pipeline just like physics or animation systems. Flexible, swappable, and built to enhance human creativity. And AI middleware is now part of the creative toolchain, not replacing artists or designers, but collaborating with them. You'll find it everywhere. An NPC brain plugin that adapts behavior on the fly, a 3D lip syncing module that matches voice acting automatically, or a generative music system that scores scenes dynamically based on pacing and mood. These aren't add-ons anymore. They're becoming standard components in modern production pipelines. And many of us, regardless of industry, rely on outsourced or third-party vendors for content. And that content is, for the most part, created by humans. But outsourcing isn't external anymore. It's part of the live data pipeline. AI connects internal and external contributors while maintaining standards set by the internal team. So in games, for instance, AI helps to check technical specs and quality from the outsourced art vendor before it's integrated into the source repository. So each project, has a different level of standard for mesh density, mesh build quality, and texture style. And AI helps to ensure the consistency of vendor work. Of course, the developer's human art director is, the chef at the pass, so to speak, to make sure that it's approved. And soon, AI-driven proceduralism won't be random, it'll be intentional. It will learn from how players move and how artists design, and then use that knowledge to assist in building richer, more meaningful spaces. And designers could use it during creation to explore new possibilities, shaping and refining worlds dynamically, and then bake them once they're happy with the result. And generative level design and consistent texturing could quickly get content in a good-looking playable state. Then refinement would happen as AI analyzes your play patterns in the new environment and adds detail. After working with AI in this way, it becomes an assistant doing all the heavy lifting. The creativity comes from the developer. The AI uses that as creative direction. And while this is what is already happening in games, output like this might be the future of all of our projects, no matter what we're doing in tech, with design led and directed by humans, and implemented and cross-checked with the assistance of AI to do more in less time. So I'm seeing this advance rapidly in areas that developers used to rely on external agencies for. Take marketing, for instance. The latest tools analyze your presence across the web, coupled with your own internal docs, and create a marketing social strategy. And that may have otherwise taken weeks and thousands of dollars. Anything you outsource can likely be done faster in AI. And yes, this monumental change is redefining how we work, who works, and how many of us work. And it reminds me of when being an engine coder was a thing in games, and we all coded our own engines. Now, well, it's down to the decision of which engine won licenses, Unreal, Unity, or something else. The idea of coding your own engine has largely disappeared and is considered inefficient. AI is doing the same for other specialties with the aim of giving us more for less time. Bill Gates has said he believes AI has the potential to make a 3-day work week the norm, and I actually think that's possible too, provided that the tech workers press for that change. Otherwise, I'm sure businesses would be delighted to get more work for the same pay. As for me, the biggest area of change that I've seen in our workflow is not content creation, but research and feedback. I got this idea from my wife, Brenda, who's working on a PhD. She uploaded her critical essay into chat, and she said, "Pretend you're my thesis review committee, and I'm trying to pass my Viva. What questions would you ask me?" She doesn't want AI to write or edit, any of it. Rather, she's just using it to prepare herself for what's to come. And in the same way, I've used AI to research significant industry trends and identify opportunities and challenges, and to deep research competitors or potential publishers I might want to work with. This information is all available out there. And I could play all the games, I could collate all the research and analyze it on my own, but the reality is that AI can do this faster and better than me, even plus 5 people. It's transformed product research. It's been a sounding board, and I kind of still play all the games, though. Expedition 33 was a really cool game this year. For instance, I know of a developer whose game was rejected by a major publisher. They noted that they felt the character design wasn't next-gen enough, but that left him only wanting constructive, actionable feedback. So he engaged with chat, did a deep dive on the character designs over the last 10 years, and provided feedback that was actionable and made a huge difference in the project overall, and that project is now on its way. And ultimately, I think AI is going to help small teams, particularly small independent teams, get ahead quicker, particularly in tasks that used to where we used to outsource or rely on external vendors for. But I also think that companies who demand their employees to use AI for everything are putting the cart before the horse, and they're rushing it. Coders who are forced to use AI may spend more time optimizing poor code than if they had just written it themselves. And the same goes for any creative field. The doom level that AI created for me, for instance, would be thrown out entirely and just created from the ground up. We still need humans there. And that is, of course, the great challenge of generative AI. We can do more with less. And that means that either more products or the same amount of products, but fewer people to make them. And with this choice, more products over fewer people is a choice that's down to the people who are making products. And as for me, I'll never use AI to create my levels or my game designs. I'll use it where it makes sense to, like putting together a report for ratings or doing deep analysis on the market or competitors. But I want to acknowledge that this inflection point comes at a cost of jobs, real lives, and real people. And I'm not happy about that. Our former publishers invested heavily in AI, and while I cannot draw a direct correlation between their increased investment and our loss of funding, I personally felt the pain of that decision again and again. And it was that loss of funding that got us to where we are today, a micro team. The rise of the micro team is one of the major changes we're seeing at this inflection point for multiple reasons. For starters, tooling is radically better. There are low-code platforms to full-stack frameworks like Next.js, Supabase, or Flutter that allow small teams to ship what was once required full departments. And in games, engines like Unreal 5 give small teams near AAA capabilities without a team of 100. And there are also things that we can just take straight off the shelf. In games, we have asset marketplaces that allow us to mock up a prototype of a game. Characters, enemies, weapons, world assets, you name it. But beyond games, creators can access or generate high-quality assets instantly using platforms like, say, Figma, Firefly, or other 3D marketplaces. There's also open-source libraries, frameworks, and components that reduce the need for us to build everything from scratch. Integrating something is often faster than inventing it, you think. Ultimately, it's down to the people, us, the workers, and those that invest or fund tech. After recent tech contractions, investors are prioritizing lean teams, sustainable burn, and validated MVPs. No one that I know is getting funded on a paper pitch anymore. People want to see the game, and they want to see a lean team behind it. But also, there's a tremendous burnout afoot. Like many senior coders and creatives are leaving big tech companies or late-stage startups to work on tools, apps, and platforms that reflect personal values and respect their time. As I mentioned earlier, our team went from 110 people in July to a micro team of 5 full-time people by October. In our case, it was not a choice. In fact, we were well on the way towards our next milestone with plans to release the entire game in late 2026 or 27. However, the industry had other plans. We lost our funding, found ourselves moving to a micro team sooner than we expected. But let me tell you why we wanted to go to a micro team even before we lost our funding. The larger the team, the more overhead that there is, and that overhead usually means more management, more meetings, and more busy work. And as game director, I found myself mostly in meetings every day, making sure that all the other designers, artists, musicians, and coders on the team were aligned on the overall game vision and the details of every aspect. And while I love making games, I never said, ooh, if I could only be in more meetings, like ever. I mean, Who loves meetings? Maybe these people do, but I am not one of these people. I referred to it as game dev co-op, where you try to get people to do what you want them to do, but ultimately it doesn't quite work out right. There are just too many independently moving parts, even if the people are exceptionally talented, and our team definitely was full of people like that. I wanted to get back to coding, back to design, back to making games, not meetings. The other directors on the project, it turned out they felt the same way. And so the silver lining, if you can call it that, of our loss of funding was that it got us to where we needed to be sooner rather than later. A smaller team doing hands-on work, doing what they love to do. And I'm not sure how long it may have taken us otherwise had this not happened, but we were on our way. And all that said, I believe a sort of radical independence has taken over our industry, not just micro teams and smaller companies, but individuals. Let me ask by a show of hands. How many of you have been laid off in the last couple of years? All right. And now how many of you have been laid off multiple times? All right. So last, how many of you said, screw working for someone else, I'm going to work for myself, and are either doing it or making plans to do it? Yeah, all right. Well, that's what I mean by radical independence. The overwhelming desire to go it alone, to at least be aware of everything and not surprised by yet another layoff or funding loss. As for me and others like me, we want off the treadmill. The happiest I've ever been is working in a small team where we were literally in control of our own destiny, and that's where I'm at now. It's a privileged position for certain to be able to do this at all, but this radical independence, the desire to be the captain of one's own ship, to do what you want to do, is a growing trend. Ironically, what's allowing the possibility in some of our previous massive inflection points. The pandemic, which proved that we didn't need to be in an office together, and we could work collaboratively all over the world. The rise of the internet and the social graph allowed us to reach audiences and potential clients like never before. We could curate communities around our ideas before launch so that our products had a receptive market. And of course, 2022 and the restructurings in the industry, in part due to the mass investment in AI. And the same investment in AI, at the very least, returned collaboration tools and an ability to automate tasks that we had not been able to automate before. And even if you don't want to go it alone, or are already in a big company, the reality is that what investors in the market are interested in at the moment are the smaller bets, the smaller games, the smaller teams, the smaller apps. Trying to find tens of millions of investment in anything but AI itself is a challenge. For many, though, there's also a daunting reality that you don't have to compete with the giants. You make something smaller for a catered niche community. Let me give you an example from our company. One could make something to compete with Call of Duty. That'd be difficult, but, or even something to compete with a smaller series like, say, Hitman, and that's playing in a big pool with big bets for big dollars. But you can also play in a smaller pool with smaller bets and still come out ahead. Many game developers, myself included, have decided to cater to a niche rather than spend tens of millions chasing the mainstream. Why try to compete with Call of Duty when you can make Sigil? Sigil and Sigil 2 were financially successful, and I developed those by myself for a relatively small and engaged community. It's this radical independence that's a hope for many people. And over the last few years, we've seen a dramatic shift in what small teams can achieve. Tools like Unreal Engine 5, Godot, and Unity, alongside vast open asset libraries and procedural systems, have transformed the development landscape. What once took a 100-person team can now be done by 5, sometimes even 1, with the right vision and tooling. And we're seeing solo developers and small studios releasing work that rivals AA production in quality, scope, and impact. And it's not just a technical achievement, it's a creative one. There was a time when I thought that the era of id was behind us, that the days of 5 people making something world-shaking were gone. It just took too much to reach AAA quality. The original Doom team, 6 people. Quake, 10 core developers. What we lacked in manpower, we made up for with clarity, control, and speed. Although our photographs were questionable. Today, small teams are rising again, but not because things got easier. It's because the tools got better, and the playing field hasn't just leveled, it's changed entirely. Gamers are increasingly over the graphics arms race. They want function, fun, and value, not just pretty graphics. So games like Undertale and Balatro, built by solo devs, have sold millions of copies. The same trend shows up in tech tools, tools built by single developers or micro teams that are solving pain points for other devs or those looking to get into tech. Base 44, for instance, was made by a solo dev, and it gained a following quickly. And for many, the rise of micro teams, however we got here, will let us do what we want when we want on our own terms. Micro teams are at the center of this shift. What used to be a path from mod to standalone game is now turned inward. Instead of leaving the parent game, creators stay inside it. Now, platforms once sparked external innovation have evolved into self-contained publishing ecosystems. That's the section called Platforms as Publishers and Creators as Studios. Game dev learned early that ecosystems outlive single products. The rise of game engines allowed many games to be created quicker than they used to be by using these engines. The first wave of game ecosystems began with Quake in 1996. Quake was incredibly moddable, and in addition to enabling the creation of hundreds of mods, was used to create a completely new game, Half-Life, published in 1998. The first Call of Duty, a World War II shooter based on the Quake 3 engine, was released in 2003. And after this would be Team Fortress, the evolution of the Quake mod Team Fortress. That's Team Fortress 2, I mean. And then we would see Portal, which was another Quake mod that would become a full game on its own. Finally, one of the most played Half-Life mods, Counter-Strike, would get its own full commercial release. And when Half-Life 2 was released in 2004, a mod called Gary's Mod was released shortly after. The mod became so popular that Valve Software published it as a standalone game in 2006, and it went on to sell over 20 million copies. As mods increasingly became full-fledged commercial releases, developers recognized the value of maintaining control over their creative ecosystems. By keeping creation within the parent game, they could encourage creators to develop and publish inside their own platforms. So game platforms like Roblox and Fortnite, they thrive as creative ecosystems. Creators make and sell an incredible amount of mods that run inside these games. With Roblox, players run games inside Roblox, so the game became a publishing platform for creators. And Epic Games fully developed this ecosystem into the Fortnite creator economy. It has a creator portal to manage all the games you've made, the Creator Economy 2.0 that rewards creators based on the amount of players engaged with their content, and Unreal Editor for Fortnite, that is where creators fully develop their custom experiences directly in the game. So ecosystems enable compounding innovation. Every new plugin, mod, or integration adds value for everyone else. Your users don't just consume what you build, they extend it, multiply it, and push it in directions that you never expected. And I never thought that Doom would have advanced as far as it has. It provided the start for today's game ecosystems. All right, so changing pipelines. In the early 1990s, as game development teams were just beginning to take shape, we didn't have networks to share our files. Everything was done by hand, so we'd copy our code and art onto floppy disks, and we'd pass them around the office. There was no source control, no databases, just a handful of disks and a lot of discipline to keep everything in sync. And by 1991, we finally had a breakthrough, a PC that ran Novell NetWare. That became our file server, and we set up a BNC network for the four of us working in that room. No more floppies, but we didn't have source control. That wouldn't arrive for a few more years. The game industry moves fast, and before long, game teams all over the world had networks, file servers, and remote syncing with outsourced providers for massive projects. Game devs normalized remote collaboration long before other industries. We were syncing multi-gig textures and builds from across the world. And now with cloud-native workflows, every step from DCC tools to CI/CD is distributed and AI optimized. Our version control isn't just about code, it's everything from shaders to mega scans. AI helps identify merge conflicts before they even happen, tagging assets semantically instead of just by file name, and training AI based on the repository integration history for all the different file types. Large Unreal Engine 5 projects can exceed terabytes of source data. These are the textures, the materials, 3D meshes, and animation data for millions of assets. And one reason why there's so much data in our repos is due to versioning across millions of assets with branching and streaming per team. Many teams use cloud-hosted Perforce Helix, and edge caching improves global performance for us. And games now use real-time streaming, either from local or from cloud servers. AI models predict the player's path, and they prefetch the data needed to render that part of the world before it needs to be drawn. And these are 3D models, lighting data, and other assets. And virtual production spaces are used in games and film now, with shows like The Mandalorian using a new stagecraft virtual environment system powered by Unreal Engine. Making sure scenes have high frame rate is critical to keeping the action looking real. AI helps to predict the camera moves and arrange assets appropriately. Teams are starting to collaborate in these virtual production environments in the engine, whether it's Unreal Engine or NVIDIA's Omniverse. Which means that game engines now drive Hollywood productions, and cloud-native software stacks are shaping our tool chains. The boundaries between film, VFX, and games have completely dissolved. And nowadays, the modern studio exists where your cloud login does. AI isn't just changing how we make games, it's changing what a studio even means. Team members are rarely on site or in the same country. The project data is stored in the cloud. Sometimes even the PC developers aren't sitting. The PCs that developers use are not in the developers' homes. They actually remote into a powerful workstation that's at the office, one that's loaded with 256 gigs of RAM and the latest graphic card so they can build and test at full speed. Half the desks sit empty, yet every screen is alive. Remote teammates move across them, switching tasks, updating, creating. The studio exists between two worlds now, tangible and digital, both equally real. Many team members, at least in game dev, need to develop for a console dev system, a special piece of hardware. And we have those dev kits just stacked up in the server room. Each one is assigned an IP to a team member, and they remotely connect for development. We've been doing this for years. Game development is the proving ground for future AI-integrated pipelines across all tech sectors. And just lessons for the broader tech. Games compress a decade of technological evolution into each project. We solve for performance, scale, and immersion simultaneously. Game studios operate as integrated tech labs, bringing together AI, physics, networking, UX, art, data, and even psychology under one roof. Every discipline collaborates in real time to create a single seamless experience, which is why game development sits at the intersection of almost every major technology field. Every technical domain meets under one roof, and it all happens in real time. Engineers, artists, designers, and data scientists work side by side, solving problems as they appear. That immediacy forces collaboration and innovation that you just don't see in slower, more segmented industries. And constraints like performance, schedule, and user expectations drive ruthless innovation. When you're forced to deliver high quality at high speed, you find creative solutions that wouldn't emerge under comfortable conditions, and that's where the real breakthroughs happen. The lessons here apply to any complex system, from cloud apps and AI services to autonomous systems. Anywhere you're managing performance, scale, and user experience at once, the same principles that drive game development apply. In studios with world-class internal tools ship faster, prototype more, and attract better talent. The same is true. Your pipeline is your leverage. And the right tools don't just speed production, they shape the way teams think, collaborate, and solve problems. and the tools that you choose define your creative culture as much as your workflow. In game development, custom engines, editors, and pipelines evolve alongside the team. Every project shapes the tools, and the tools in turn shape how the team works. And the hard part isn't building AI, it's building creative tools that let artists and designers and engineers use it naturally inside their existing pipelines. Invest in tools that shorten iteration loops and capture creativity at the source. Tools that let ideas move directly from the creator's mind into the build without friction. The faster teams can test and refine their ideas, and the stronger the final product becomes. And rapid iteration cycles lead to better design, better data, and sharper intuition because every quick test feeds back into the next one. The faster that you can experiment and learn, the more your instincts and decisions become grounded in real evidence, not guesswork. In 1991, the four of us at id Software created 13 games that one year. We had continuous iteration cycles, and each game benefited from the previous one immediately as we had to make 2 games at the same time that year. Game dev treats QA as a design partner, not an afterthought. QA shapes how the game feels, not whether it works. That's a mindset that broader tech can take to heart. Quality isn't something that you check at the end, it's something that you build in from the very start. And the success of engines, mods, and even entire genres come from communities that co-own the experience with you. They experiment, extend, and evolve your work in ways that no studio could plan. Every software product has a potential for that kind of creative ecosystem, a modding scene, if you're willing to open the doors and let people build with you. And we made Doom highly moddable and Quake even more so. And communities provide QA, advocacy, innovation, and content for free. They're an extension of your team. When you grow and nurture the community on a Discord server in real time, you're not just building fans, you're building collaborators who make your product better every day. Open AIs and creative freedom turn your users into a crowdsourced R&D lab. In broader tech, active communities can sustain innovation long after budgets or leadership changes. And when performance is non-negotiable and experience is everything, you learn lessons other industries don't figure out for years. Game dev has always been on that edge, from pushing GPUs to inventing real-time rendering and even laying the groundwork for what we call now the metaverse. Game dev pushes hardware to its limits, maximizing parallelism, GPU compute, streaming, and minimizing latency. Every frame is a performance puzzle, and solving it drives the hardware innovations that the rest of tech would eventually benefit from. And players judge UX in milliseconds. Every hitch, delay, or frame drop breaks immersion, and that's why we obsess over every frame, every input, every response, and it's a discipline that forces us to think about performance and experience as the same thing. And every advance in physics, rendering, and input becomes the foundation for broader tech. The breakthroughs that we make to make games look and feel better end up powering everything from VR and real-time 3D visualization to digital twins and simulation platforms. And the frontier of interaction design, AR, VR, haptics, and spatial UX, is being pioneered in games. Game developers are exploring how people move, see, and feel in digital spaces, setting the standards that tech builds on. And the future of technology will look more like a game studio than a factory. Creative, real-time, highly collaborative, that's already how we work. We build, test, and iterate live with artists, engineers, and AI, all in the same loop. And build tools that empower creativity, tools that remove friction, encourage experimentation, let ideas flow naturally from thought to execution. The best tools don't just support creativity, they amplify it. And think in ecosystems, not silos. Build systems that connect, extend, and grow together. The most powerful innovations don't live in isolation. They thrive when tools, teams, and ideas interact across boundaries. And keep pipelines agile and modular, flexible enough to adapt as technology and ideas evolve. When every part of your process can change independently, innovation becomes faster and it's far less risky. And nurture communities as strategic assets. They're not just your audience, they're your long-term advantage. A strong community gives feedback, spreads innovation, and helps keep your ecosystem alive long after launch. So stay obsessed with performance and user experience. They're the heart of everything that we build, And when technology feels effortless and powerful at the same time, that's when it becomes magic. Thank you for having me here at Code Talks.